Is going on YouTube? My name is Rob Costello. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going over how to enlarge your prints, doing it the right way, and what the difference is between paper and whether you resize an image or not, even if the megapixels are the same. So as you can see here inside of me, I've got two different prints that are actually the same image, but they're done completely differently. One has been enlarged properly, one has not, and they're both been printed on different papers. So we're going to go over the differences and show you guys just how much of a difference the detail can be in something like this. So both of these are 20 by 30 prints. They were both printed at the same location with the same printer. They are both essentially the same image, even though the dimensions were changed in post-processing. So I'm going to go ahead and get the camera. We're going to bring it up nice and close and show you guys some close-up shots to show you what can happen if you don't export and save your images the right way in Photoshop or Lightroom. Alright, so as we sit here about 4 feet away from the actual image, you can see that the image doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty sharp. There's a lot of detail on the water. This was a longer exposure at a local beach here, so it was about a 3-second exposure, and it gives you the nice foggy, misty look in the water. But the rocks from this distance don't look too bad. But when we get really close, you're going to see that the details are actually on the softer side from being enlarged. And also actually got some heavy artifacting in a few spots as well, which is very disappointing, but is something that was my own fault when I originally printed this. I brought the wrong file that was not enlarged. So we're going to go ahead and take a close-up look at that particular image now and what went wrong. Alright, so as you guys look here, this is one of the big rocks that's in the image, and from being zoomed out, it doesn't look too bad. Now, we do have a little bit of a glare hitting the frame here from my window, but overall, the detail and the image quality doesn't look too bad. But if you take a look and we actually zoom into the image, it does have a lot of artifacting in the shadows. So this particular image, it doesn't look too bad, and it was shot at 24 megapixels, which is really pushing the 20 by 30 limit as it is. If you want to print a 20 by 30 photo purely on the resolution of your camera, you would need a 56 megapixel camera in order to make a clean print with no enlarging. So we're talking it's under half, so it's something that you definitely need to enlarge correctly. So on this image, there was actually several different locations where there was artifacting really heavy, and I'd say there was 3 really bad spots, and you could see it in the little spots when you look closer. But this bigger rock in the dark shadow, you could actually see the direct squares of where it was artifacting. It was really bad. Down here in the lower corner was especially bad, especially being a foreground object. This particular rock is really soft. Now, typically when you take photos, the sharpest part of the image is going to be in the center, and as you get to the corners, it does soften, so that's kind of to be expected. But the artifacting in this particular spot of the rock was really bad. There was another rock further up high here, in this whole little section here, and then another spot over here, where again you can see definitive squares from where the printer just couldn't make the distinguishing factor between the different highlights, and it just looks terrible. From a distance it looks fine, but from up close it does not look good. Also, it's a little hard to tell with the lighting I have in here now, but this was printed on a gloss photo paper, 20 by 30 gloss. So when it's in a frame, it's hard to tell whether it was printed as gloss or matte just based on looking for the texture, but you can tell a difference when you look at reflections and crinkles. Glossy images, if they have a little dent or any kind of abnormalities in the paper, they will show because you'll see the sheen, and you can see almost like on a car. It's very easy to see where there's a little dent on a car because of the reflection. Versus if you have a matte paper, it makes it a lot harder to see those imperfections. It also eliminates glare, and I think it looks better overall. When I take this paper out of the frame, it looks like a printed photo. Anything you get from your local store, even if it's like a 4x6, it looks like photo paper. Versus when you have it printed on matte, it looks more like it's a piece of art. It's more like a painting. It's a lot more pleasing to the eye, in my personal opinion. But it varies on what you want to do. When you put it behind the actual glass or acrylic in the frame, it becomes harder to distinguish, except for the creases and any little imperfections in the paper do stand out a lot more with the glossy paper as opposed to matte. Now in this shot we have the same print, but this one was enlarged properly and it was done on a matte paper. Overall, the image is a lot brighter just simply from doing the correct enlargement. A lot of the shadows and details were retained, so they're not as crushed. When we look into this big rock where the other compression was really bad, there's no compression. The details are substantially sharper. Like, it looks like a focused photo versus an out of focus photo when you compare the two. Also, you see all the details in the shadow. You can see the different cracks in the rock, the different color basically the different discolorations in the rock itself are showing up, and you have none of that pixelization. Same thing down here when we come to the corner where it was really soft. It's still softer than this main rock. Like I said, that's kind of to be expected when you're getting to the corner of a lens, but there's no pixelization, and there's definitely a lot more detail. You can see all the different pits in the rock, the different details and shadows. I can tell here that there's an indentation in the rock. In the other photo, you couldn't see any of that. And the same thing up here. We have no pixelization. There's a bunch of small rocks. None of them are blended together, and you can see the detail even in the deepest shadows. So overall, enlarging the photo made a huge difference in print quality. Just print quality alone went up. I'd say it's probably twice as sharp, if not more. Another thing that also helps with this particular image is the matte paper, because it's not reflective inside the frame. You don't see any imperfections on this paper at all. It's nice and clean, and even if there is a small dent or an imperfection, you can't see it because there's no light bouncing off of it. It's just absorbing it. So it's something that I think matte works better, especially for darker images. In my opinion, if I have something that has a lot of bright colors in it, then I usually think gloss could have some advantages, but in most cases I think matte looks a lot better, and it looks a lot more like a piece of art. So let's go into Photoshop and show you guys how you properly enlarge a photo before you save it for print. Okay, so now we've actually pulled up the image in Photoshop. Now this is my original one after I've edited it. I don't have any kind of special color grade applied, that's why it says no grade up here, but this is the JPEG file that I would traditionally bring to print, except for it has not been enlarged. As you can tell here, as I zoom into the detail of the rock, all the details are there. There's no pixelization. I can zoom right in and it still looks pretty good. But again, as I print it as is, it will become degraded because it becomes stretched out too much and the printer can't handle it. So what you need to do is change your image settings to allow this to be the correct printed size. So it's very easy to do. Once you've done all your resizing and your editing, you can come up to image. You're going to go to image size. The shortcut is Alt-Control-I if you do that. And as you guys can see, the original size here, the dimensions are 6,000 pixels by 4,000, and the width is 20 inches by 13 inches. We want 20 by 30. So what I want to do is I want to change this dimension width to 30, and as you can see, it automatically changed the height to the 20 that we need. It is very important to make sure that the resolution is set to 300 pixels per inch, because when you print out an image, you want 300 ppi or dpi, which stands for pixels per inch or dots per inch for the printer. And what that does is it allows you to be at arm's length, about a foot or two away, and still have all the details, and it doesn't look pixelated. And it retains enough of a print detail where to the human eye it looks good. If you were to do something, say like 50 ppi, and you were right on top of the image about a foot away, you'd be able to see where the print lines are and it wouldn't look smooth. So 300 is very important. So once you have the resolution set to 300, you're all set. You need to make sure you check off resample, and in the drop down you want to choose preserve details for enlargement. Then when you're done, you hit OK, and you should see the image slightly change in size. It loads, and now it's a little bigger. It doesn't look like much on the screen, and in fact, if you look at the actual rocks and stuff, it doesn't look like it's any sharper, but it in fact is going to print out with more detail. Now, if you're going to enlarge an image, another thing that I recommend is hitting Control-Shift-A to bring up Camera Raw, or you can go to Filters and select Camera Raw, and I always advise adding a little bit of sharpening. So what I usually do is I go to the mask option and I hold down my Alt button on the keyboard and I drag the slider to highlight what I want to have sharpened. Right about there looks pretty good since we want most of the outlines of the rock. I let go, and then I can adjust my sharpening. That will only sharpen the objects that were highlighted when I did the masking. Then when you print it, it'll retain just a little bit more of a sharpness since it is going to be stretched out when you're enlarging the actual print. And that's it. You hit OK, you go to your file, and you hit save, and you're done. You take that file and you can bring it to your printer or your print shop or send it out online, whatever you prefer. Basically, you're going to print out the detail, and that's going to be it. You're going to get a nice clean print. Personally, pick a good paper, experiment, find out what you like and what you don't like. You might like the glossy look, you might like the matte look, you might look like kind of in the middle, the semi-gloss, or metallic, or satin. There's so many different papers out there. I think paper can make or break your image. Just between looking at the same image being printed at that 20 by 30 look, the glossy is definitely not as nice as the matte. It all depends on your preference and what you like. But definitely experiment, and if you guys have any other questions, let me know down in the comments down below. Hit the subscribe button for more tutorials for photography and Photoshop as well as Adobe Premiere, and I will see you guys in the next video.